This conference will now be recorded.
All right.
So I'm guessing everyone's getting in now. They got the right link.
Yes.
Are people still coming in?
I think we slowed down at 27, so I think this is probably a great time to get started.
Absolutely. I'll just begin by saying good evening, everyone. I'm not showing my face. I'm sort of a mess right now. I had my second COVID shot vaccine, but I want to say first, thank you to Dr. Murray for taking time out your busy schedule to just and assist us with learning more about the college process. And I'm gonna turn the floor over to you. Uh, so that already we're late, so I don't want to. I know you have a plethora of information to provide, so we're just going to turn it over to you. Again, thank you everyone for joining. Like I said, I want to say that as a parent, um, experiencing what most of you guys are experiencing right now, I felt that it was very important that we open up a forum for you guys to get more knowledge and understanding about, the whole college process. Again, I'm not going to take up any more time. I'm turning the floor over to Dr. Murray. It's yours.
Okay, great. All right. Well, thank you, everyone, and for joining tonight's webinar. Please let me know if you have difficulty seeing the slides. I am sharing my screen. We're going to go ahead and get started. First, I want to say welcome to all the West Caldwell Tech High School students and families for joining the webinar. Your lines will be muted until the Q&A, so if you haven't muted your line, please mute your line just to minimize any background noise. And please know that there will be a question and answer session at the end of the webinar, and this webinar is being recorded. Also, the main objectives for this webinar tonight are to make sure that we equip students, and if your parents are joining us, parents with practical strategies to navigate the college admissions process. We certainly want to make sure we discuss how to apply for financial aid and scholarships to a light level, and I also want to talk about relevant college implications as a result of COVID-19. My intent is for this to be an interactive discussion, so please feel free to use the chat function anywhere throughout the talk so that we can chat about anything that you like. If you have questions, please share your questions as I'm speaking, and I'll do my best to answer your questions. All right, so if you haven't muted your lines, please do. All right, so now I'm going to go ahead and get started. So the first thing I want to do is introduce myself. I'm Dr. Christy Murray. I am a graduate of an HBCU. I always start out by telling a little bit about my story. Way back in 1993, I was a high school senior. It was before the internet, before we could Google everything. And I am the youngest of three girls. I have a set of older twin sisters who are currently in college. At that time, they were currently in college. And I was the youngest. So I'd gone on all these college tours, and I came home and I told my mom, hey, I know where I want to go. I want to go to Hampton University and I want to major in engineering. And so my mother said, well, that's great, but with your sisters, both your sisters in school, I can't afford Hampton. It's a private school. So she said, maybe you should pick somewhere else. And I said, well, I really don't want to go anywhere else. So we kind of went back and forth. And she finally says, look, I'm happy to help you to get to Hampton, but we're going to have to figure out a way to pay for it because I can't pay for it out of pocket. So I rolled up my sleeves. I put together a system to be able to quickly apply to different schools and that sort of thing. One day, I'm in high school in the auditorium. We were in the middle of an assembly, and my school counselor comes and she grabs me out of class and she says, "Hey, Christy, come talk to me for a minute. What if I told you I had a scholarship looking for students who are majoring in electrical engineering, actually majoring in engineering, and they want to go to Hampton University and they have a scholarship. Are you interested in it?" I said, "Absolutely. That's exactly where I want to go to school." And she said, "There's only one caveat. You have to postmark by tomorrow." Now, remember I said before the internet, so these applications aren't applications that you can just email and send electronically. You have to be physically taken to the post office and mail. So she said, "Can you make that happen?" And I said, "Yes, I can." And she said, I said, "But I have one question for you. Can you get my high school transcripts out that quick?" Because everybody knows high schools have their own processes. And she looked at me and she said, "Yes, let me work on that, but I'll get them out." So I went home and I pulled together. I had this whole system watching my sisters go through the process. So I kind of had an idea of what I wanted to do. So I had a stack of college applications. I had a stack of essays that I'd pre-written on different topics. I had a stack of letters of recommendation that had gotten generalized so that I could use them over and over again. And so I started looking at the requirements for the scholarship and I pulled everything together. And boy, did I get that package in the mail. When I got that package in the mail, a couple weeks went by and I got a letter back saying, "Hey, congratulations, we've selected you to come interview." So I was like, "I got an interview for a scholarship? Okay, let me go to the library and check out a book about how to interview," because I couldn't Google it. And I did. I went in there and the first interview, I nailed it. They called me back for a second one. Obviously, I nailed it because by the time I got home from that second interview, my phone was ringing when I walked in the door and they were offering me that scholarship. That scholarship consisted of a full scholarship to go to Hampton, a summer internship every summer I attended Hampton University, and a full-time job when I graduated from college. And I had that entire package the day I graduated from high school. So I share with you that story because I want to encourage you to develop a system. And some of the things that I've learned then and I've learned throughout my endeavor since then, helping others, is really about how to prepare yourself to be able to best help yourself. As you can see, I've gone back to school. I did go to Hampton. I did graduate. And I didn't graduate as the valedictorian of my high school class. I had like a 3.6. But they had higher grade point averages than I did. And so I want my story to be an motivation and an encouragement to others to make sure that you don't lose sight of what is important to you, and to also make sure that you stay encouraged through this process, no matter what your story is. I love learning. So as you can see, I've been back to college a few times since then. And I really love talking to students and helping them with their college aspirations. Here's the other reason why I get involved and I love doing this. I too have two sons who either have recently or are currently going through this process. On the left, I have my college sophomore. He's at Old Dominion University down here in Virginia. He's majoring in mass communication. And I have a high school senior. He plays football and basketball. So I consider him my scholar athlete. He has really good grades. And he's majoring in computer science. And he's planning to attend an HBCU, Historically Black College and University, in the fall. And he actually just recently received a Division I football scholarship. So I share my experiences as a student, a life student, but also as a parent who currently I'm up to date on some of the things that are taking place. And I want to share with you a lot of those practical strategies that I wish someone had told me years ago. So one of the things I did is I wrote a couple of books about it. And Miss Robinson at your high school will be given 100 copies of both books, The College Planning Strategies I Wish Someone Had Told Me, and College Funding Strategies I Wish Someone Had Told Me. So you guys will be receiving, I think her junior class will be receiving both copies of these books. So I wrote these books because there was a lot of information I'm finding that students either they don't know where to find it, students and parents, or they may not have access to practical information in one place that could really make the difference in their pursuits. So as you hear me talk today, From that first book, the Green Book, College Planning Strategies, I'm going to touch on some of the 10 strategies you see listed here in some extent or another. The one I'm not going to touch on the most, I'll touch on the least, is number 10. I do talk about NCAA eligibility requirements for scholar athletes and students who are interested in sports in college, but I'm not going to touch on that as much in this workshop. But if you have an interest in that, let me know when you do the survey at the end of the session, and we'll certainly try to come back with a dedicated session on that. So for the agenda today, we're going to talk about college planning. We're going to start out with a Where Are You Now assessment, which I'll explain in just a minute. We're going to talk about developing a college plan. I'm going to share best practices for college planning. We'll talk about different types of colleges. How do you choose a major and a college? We'll talk a bit about college applications, applying for financial aid and scholarships. And then we'll conclude our session. I'll give you some general takeaways I have, and then I'll ask you to do a survey at the end to give us your feedback on how well you thought this session went. But most importantly, I want to take questions. Either you can share your questions.
My phone was just sitting there.
Please mute your phones if you haven't. Thank you. And so at the end, I want to make sure we give some time to answer any questions you may have. All right, so first up, please do me a favor. I'm going to use the chat a number of times. So we have about 30, 34 students and hopefully parents on. Please let me know in the chat. Just let me know if you're a freshman, sophomore, junior, senior. Let me know what year you are in school, and or if you're a parent or a student. Are Newark Tech juniors able to receive 2 books? I'll let Ms. Robinson answer that question a little bit later. And I'm not familiar with that Newark Tech, but I'm happy to make sure you know where my resources are at the end of this talk. All right, so I see a lot of juniors. Okay, Matthew, Vanessa, Derek. Okay, I see Benjerly, who's a senior. All right, so we have a lot of juniors and a senior on. Let me know anybody else. Okay, I see a few more seniors. And this is helpful because it'll help me to make sure I speak to the predominant group and share some other things that maybe seniors will need. Kareem is a freshman. All right, it's good to see freshmen. In fact, I encourage the earlier you start your college planning process, freshman year, sophomore year, Elisa, great, the better off you'll be. All right, so we're seeing a lot of juniors. So I see this is certainly good to see. So we're going to take a little assessment. Don't get nervous. It's kind of like a pop quiz, but in the essence where you really don't have to write anything down, but I want you to think about it, and parents think about your responses to some of these questions. Think about it, and then a few of them I may ask you to put in the chat, a few brave volunteers, but we're not going to put all of them in the chat. We're going to talk about them. Number 1, what is your, if you're a student or if you're a parent, what's your child or student, what's your cumulative grade point average? Do you know what your grade point average is? If you don't, what I will tell you is that you should find out ASAP as parents and as students. It's very important to know your grade point average because you can't influence pro or you don't know is taking place. So if you, I'm going to mute your lines if I'm getting some background noise. So please make sure you're muted. So the first question is, yes, you should know your grade point average. In fact, after my sons, every semester, I go in, whether it's high school or college, and I make sure I have the most current grade point average. If you need to put your classes or take more rigorous ones, it's very important to know what that is. True or false? Only students with a high GPA get scholarships. Let me know what you think about that in the chat. True or false? True or false? All right, I'm seeing some falses come in. And it looks like Ms. Robinson said everyone who's attending this workshop will get copies of the book. So that answers the Newark Tech question. All right, so the answer to that one is false. You do not have to have the highest grade point average to get scholarships. There are different types of scholarships, and I'm going to touch on those later in the talk, but I want you to know that merit scholarships or scholarships based on your academic performance and your SAT and ACT test scores are one key way to get scholarships, but it's not the only way. Number 3, what's your school counselor's name? If you don't know it, you don't have to put it in the chat, but I want you to think about it. And if you don't know it by heart and you haven't built a relationship with your school counselor as a student and a parent, I highly recommend that you do so. Number 4, what's the process of getting your transcripts at your high school? If at your high school and if you're in a dual enrollment program, you need them both. If you don't know the process, I would strongly encourage you to find out. The time to find out the process, because my son's high school, there's like a 4-part process, and it's not an easy process. It doesn't happen overnight to get all 4 of those parts completed. So I never want to wait until I need a transcript sent out to start to understand what that process is. If you're a sophomore, if you're a junior, you should automatically be reaching out to your school counselors to say, what is that process and what can I do early to get ahead of it? Number 5, now I want you to put this in the chat. True or false? The best time to apply for scholarship, to apply for college is in the spring of your senior year. Let me hear from my seniors. Is it true or false, seniors? Did you wait till this spring to start applying for schools? All right, Alyssa says false. All right, Ariana, false. Benjerly, Tiffany, they all say false, and they're all right. You do not want to wait until the spring of your senior year. In fact, I would encourage every last one of you in the fall, between usually September and November of your senior year, that's the prime time to apply to colleges. Here's why. Most colleges and universities who are giving out funding and financial aid, they're giving their money out on a first come, first served basis. If you haven't applied, you're not going to be considered for financial aid until you've gotten accepted in. So the earlier you get accepted, the better chance you have to get the financial aid that you need. First come, first served basis. Number 6, what are your top 3 college or university choices? How many of you are thinking about what schools you want to go to? Number 7, how many of you are thinking about what you want to major in? What are your top 3 majors? If you're not thinking about it and you're a junior, and definitely if you're a senior, then I would encourage you to start thinking very seriously about what you want to major in and start narrowing it down. We'll talk more about it. Number 8, true or false? Most colleges and universities prefer the SAT over the ACT. The answer to that is false. Most colleges and universities accept them both. What I will say is there are some predominant areas across the country that students generally take one test or the other, but they usually don't disqualify you because you've taken one test or the other. And right now, during the COVID pandemic, most universities or a lot of universities are going test optional, meaning they're admitting students and they're making it optional whether or not you take the SAT, and they're not penalizing you if you haven't taken either one of those tests at all. Number 9, true or false? Average grades in hard classes are better than easy grades, or easy A's are better than A's in easy classes. I'm going to say that again. True or false? Average grades in hard classes are better than getting A's in easy classes. True or false? I'm seeing a lot of truths, and you're absolutely right. Leslie, you're right. Wyatt, you're right. All of you are right. Colleges and universities want to see that you're challenging yourselves. They want to see that you're well-rounded. They want to see that you can take on rigorous academics and excel with those. So don't just take easy courses and sail. But if you're struggling in the harder courses, then certainly take courses where you think you can be effective and successful. I'll tell you a quick story. My son, who's in college right now, when he was in high school, he wanted to take film study, and against my best judgment, oh, Mom, I'm going to be able to get an A in this course. And he took film study and realized it wasn't what he thought it was, and ended up getting a C. So even that didn't help him out in that example. So I would encourage you to take courses that are going to best position you and also help you to maintain or improve your grade point average, but also challenge yourselves when given that opportunity. And lastly, I do want you to put the answer to number 10 in the chat. True or false? Social media accounts and your online reputation does not matter. All right, Angelie, Amber, Alyssa, Jaylis, if I'm not pronouncing your name right, I'm wrong. I'm sorry. Idris, Khalil, Derek, Vanessa, they all say false, and they're all right. How you show up matters. And I'll tell you, I always tell students there are 3 ways that you show up. How you show up in person, how you show up on paper, and how you show up online. All tell a lot about who you are to people who don't know you very well. So I would encourage you to manage your online reputation and guard it with your life. There are things that you're going to put out into the cloud. You're not going to be able to get back down. And so years from now, whether you're applying for colleges now or in the future, just be mindful of what those things are and what you want to leave out there in the universe. College officials are actually going out and they're checking, and they're actually researching students and Googling them to see what comes up, to see if you're really a good fit for their college or university. So please don't rule out opportunities before you get opportunities by how you're showing up online. So thank you for your participation with that. The reason why I have you do that assessment is because, as you hear, there's some things that you may know, you may not know. You may not know how to get your transcripts or your school counselor's name or when you should be doing applying for applications. And I really want to make sure that you are thinking about what you need to be doing and when. And to speak to that, one of the first things that I would encourage you to do is have a plan. So part of the system approach I mentioned that helped me to get to school and get scholarships was I had a plan. You should too have a plan. Your plan should be simple but effective. Your plan should not be overly complicated. It should certainly have your goals that you want to get accomplished. You should specify what type of goal it is, whether there's a cost associated with it. There's a start date, an end date, how much progress you've made in terms of percent completed. And if there are any other key things you want to notate about that item on your plan, specify what it is. As you can see, this was a sample out of a plan I used for the past few years with my sons and others I've helped. But it's very simple. You can create a spreadsheet on your own. One of the things I will tell you is on my website and in my book and workbooks, you'll notice that there are templates with a lot of these plans and tools that you'll hear me talk about. They're in my student workbook that Ms. Robinson will be giving you. So you can actually use this as a guide for your plan if you can see it, if you're able to see me and the presentation at the same time. This is kind of what it looks like. And it's just a simple Excel spreadsheet. I will say that I want you to note that this cost section on the worksheet is very important. It should be to you as a student, but also to you as parents and to your parents, because this is where you make sure that you're planning for not just what you have to do, but how much is it going to cost your parents or cost you or both. And so what I would encourage you to do is make sure you specify that. And I'll give you an example. My son, who's a high school senior, going through the same process as many of you, he applied to 13 different schools. Guess how much his application fees were? $950. Senior pictures, $400. And the list can go on and on and on. He just paid his housing deposit, $300. He also paid his enrollment fee, $100. He took a SAT prep course last summer, $500. So my only point is costs add up, particularly your senior year. And you want to make sure that you and your parents have enough time to plan. So as you think about what you need to do and the cost of it, you also have to think about the timing of it. When do you need to get it done by? So what I'm offering to juniors and seniors primarily, and in my book and in my workbook, you'll find these same checklists are in both books. And I also have checklists from 8th grade, 9th, and 10th grade listed in the workbook too. So please don't feel left out. And some of these same things will apply to you even if you're a freshman or a sophomore. But for my juniors, because you're predominantly the group that's here on the webinar tonight, keep your grades up. If you are a junior and you'll be a rising senior in the fall, your grades through your junior year are going to be the grades of C's. Your senior year grades in the fall, when I mentioned you should be applying to schools, won't be in yet. So how you're performing this year will be very important in what shows up on your transcripts that go to colleges. Make sure you know the transcript request process. If you have an opportunity to stay involved in activities and community service activities, please do so. I know it's a little bit difficult with COVID, so I would encourage you to look for those opportunities. I know some organizations actually offer online community service activities. So please take advantage of those as well. If you have an opportunity to still go to school for sports and other club activities and your parents think it's safe to do so, I would encourage you to. Also, very important, juniors, start to narrow down which colleges you want to go to and what you want to major in. Research colleges. We'll talk a little bit about that a little bit more, but don't be afraid to go online and do some virtual college tours. Update your scholar profile. I'll talk about what that is. You probably never heard of that before. Now, outside of a COVID-19 pandemic environment, I encourage sophomores and juniors and seniors to take both the SAT and the ACT, because you don't know which one you're naturally going to test the best at. And so what I encourage students to do is take both, figure out which one you had the highest score naturally, and then get in a prep course and take the test again shortly after you've prepared. We'll talk a little bit about that. Also, research financial aid and scholarships and identify who can write letters of recommendation for you. Let me know in the chat if you are a junior and you already know who's going to write your letters of recommendation. Very important. Anybody? Okay. Amberly says yes. Excellent. Great. I'm seeing a lot of yeses, so good to know. So make sure you know who can write those letters. And if you are a senior, you should have already applied to school. So if you're a senior, let me know. Say yes if you've already applied to colleges, because I'm going to make the assumption that because it's the spring, you already have. If you are a senior and you haven't, it's okay. I would encourage you to go ahead and get your applications in right away. Maybe you were waiting on your grades for your first semester of your senior year, so it's not too late. Okay, Tamia says yes, she has. Great. And I hope all the other seniors have as well. Once you start applying to schools, it's not time to sit back and coast. It's time to roll up your sleeves. And I want you to apply to colleges. Make sure that you are tracking the results. Make sure you know which colleges you've gotten accepted into and you're documenting that somewhere. Which one said yes, which one said no. You should also be using this time to apply for financial aid and scholarships and tracking your results. If you haven't completed the free application for federal student aid, the FAFSA, you should as a senior. Again, colleges will need that in order to determine how much financial aid you will receive. So you and your parents this is probably a high priority if you are a senior and you have not already completed the FAFSA. Also, you'll be receiving acceptance letters and getting financial aid award packages from those colleges, and it'll tell you how much money that school is going to offer you and how much more you may have to pay out of pocket. And then you should be getting ready to decide, narrowing it down. Like my son had 13 schools he applied to, and he should be narrowing it down and picking a school right about now. Here's the reason why that's important. Schools have deadlines, even after you apply. If you wait to pick a school, then you're going to have to wait to pay the enrollment fee, wait to let that school know that's where you want to go, wait to get housing. My son who's in college, he waited his freshman year, well, his senior year. And I kept saying, pick a school, pick a school. He waited till like May, late May. And by the time he picked a school, all the good dorms were taken. So when we showed up to campus in the fall, he was in the worst male freshman dorm. He hated it. So don't delay. Very important part of the process for seniors. All right, so now that you know what to do with the plan, how much it's going to cost, and you have your timing all nailed down, one of the things I share with you that you may not have ever heard of before is I recommend that you develop a scholar profile. This is a one-page resume-ish like the document. And the key goal here is for you to be able to market and differentiate yourself from the competition. It's really simple. You could add a picture. You'll provide your name, address, and all your contact information. You would pick an objective. I want to major in electrical engineering at a 4-year institution. Or if you know which school you want to go to, you might specify that too. Provide an oversight of your educational summary. For example, if you went to West Caldwell Tech, you have a 3.2 GPA, and you've taken the SAT and ACT, you may list that, what the scores were. Any honors and awards, your employment history and extracurricular activities and community service, highlight those. Here's what I'll tell you about this. This is not the time to be humble about your accomplishments. This is the time to acknowledge all of your contributions and all of your accomplishments, to sell yourself. This is going to be one of the first introductions to your application that organizations are going to have to make decisions by. So this is the time for you to really highlight those things that you performed well at. And any relevant coursework and hobbies that may be relevant to what you want to major in and what you want to study. Now, why do you think I want you to develop this? Yes, it'll help you differentiate yourself, but it can be used in 4 key ways. You can attach it to a college application or a scholarship application. But here's my caveat. Only attach the scholar profile if that organization allows for additional documents. If they say, we only want these items that were clearly outlined in their instructions, don't add the scholar profile because you don't want to disqualify yourself by not following directions. But if they're open and flexible to additional documentation, add the scholar profile. It's also great to use when you're writing essays and you're trying to remember, now, what did I do my freshman year and when did I do that? It's already on here because ideally, if you're a freshman or a sophomore, there's no reason why you can't start early creating the scholar profile. And that way you don't have to try to remember 4 years of activities by your senior year. I would encourage every grade level, no matter if you're a freshman all the way to a senior, create this, save it, and after every semester, update it. In fact, I had my sons update theirs every Christmas break and every summer break after each semester of school. That way they wouldn't have to try to keep all that at one time in their head. And the last way to use the scholar profile is if you need someone to write you a letter of recommendation. Let's say you go to Miss Robinson and she's your English teacher and you need her to write a letter of recommendation, but she only knows you from English. If you give her this 1-page scholar profile, she'll learn a lot more about you in a quick amount of time and will write you a powerful letter. So those are the ways in which you can display yourself on paper with the scholar profile. So somebody, and I'm not going to leave their name because they put it in the chat privately, but they said, can you give us a sample of how it looks? You were right on time, and that's the next thing that I wanted to do. Also, if you notice at the bottom of the left-hand corner of my slides, you'll see the page number in my book where you can find those templates. So I would encourage you to look these up later once you have access to the books. But here's a sample of it. It's very simple. It's clean. I'm not using 5 different fonts. Everything is lined up evenly. And I'm a stickler for these kind of details because when I review documents and scholarship applications, which I do, and I've evaluated all of those, I want to see neat, concise, formatted products. It tells a lot about who you are as an individual. Sloppy work to me means a sloppy student, and it may or may not, but time in equals quality out. So this is what it looks like. All those different categories I mentioned already, this is how it looks. I actually pulled this template from working with students that I've actually worked with, and I just backed out some of the personal information, but this is exactly how it would look. So I hope that helps to the person who asked that question. So now that you have the scholar profile developed, another key question you should be asking is, what do I want to major in? How are you going to choose a major? Juniors and seniors, let me know in the chat some of the key majors that you're thinking about. You don't have to have it nailed down, but I am interested in some of the majors that you're thinking about. I will tell you, for those who may not know what they want to major in, start thinking about it very seriously. What are you interested in? What do you value? What are you passionate about? What are those and abilities that you have that you really want to pursue? I see psychology, pre-law, artificial intelligence, pharmacy, business, medical biology, neuroscience. That sounds pretty interesting. game systems, 3D animation, awesome, creative writing, computer science, etc., counseling. So I'm glad your wheels are turning and you're thinking about it. How do you narrow it down? I would recommend you think seriously yourself. Ultimately, it's going to be your decision. And I would recommend that you get assistance. Talk to people who know you well, parents, counselors, trusted associates, and advisors, and find out, hey, you know me very well. What do you think I'm naturally good at? I shared things with my sons, and they, of course, went in a different direction, but that's fine. I want them to find working for them. And sometimes you almost have to hear what you don't want to do in order to really guide you to where what you may want to do. Also, I would encourage you to don't over specialize. And what I mean by that is don't pick a major. You want to pick a major that gives you the ability to do some of the things that you specified in the chat function, but don't make it so specific that if you decide I no longer want to do basket weaving, I'm just going to pick on basket weaving because nobody mentioned it in the chat and it just seems like a harmless major. Let's say you pick basket weaving and you get 3/4 of the way through it, or you graduate and you don't like it at all. And you go to somebody to work in a totally different career field and they say, well, what's your degree in? Basket weaving. And they're going to probably direct you back to that industry. I majored in engineering, for example, but engineering is so broad. You name one organization who wouldn't need engineers to some degree, or people who are getting math or science. So what I mean by that is pick something that gives you flexibility to use that same degree in different ways. Like if you had a computer science degree or pre-med or something like that, you can do a lot with that. And so you want to create opportunities for yourself even as you select a major. And the Princeton Review, I put the link here, but they have a great college major search online tools. You can actually put in different majors and it'll spit out information about them so that you can learn more. So I offer that up. But just know that there's a lot of online tools that you can go out and Google, and they will give you more information about different majors. You know, the other thing I would advise you to do, talk to people, not text them, but talk to people. When you're with family and friends and you have an opportunity to get back out after the pandemic, or pick up the phone and call people even while you're in the pandemic and say, hey, Ms. Robinson, I've always wanted to be an educator and I know that you're a principal. What do you find most rewarding about that? And what do you find the most challenging? So talk to people in the different professions that you're interested in, or even professions you're not interested in, and find out what's worked well for them and what's been a challenge for them. And that way you can factor those things into your decision making. And when that's all done, I highly recommend that you make a list of potential majors you're thinking about. Keep that list with you. Because now that you have majors, you'll need the list of majors to start thinking about which schools have that major. So there's a connection between these things. You have to make sure that you have a major and that the schools that you're researching has the majors that you desire. The good news is that there are over 2,000 colleges and universities in the US to choose from. Some students may want to pursue a vocational or trade school. Let's say you decide I want to be an electrician or a plumber and I don't want to go to a 4-year school. You certainly have that ability to. You can do that. You can develop a trade. Most trade schools you can complete in 2 years or less, and you can walk away with a license or certification or certificate in that area, and you can go off and work and have a lucrative career, or even start your own business. Also, there are 2-year colleges and universities, junior colleges, where you're likely to walk away with an associate's degree. And then there are 4-year colleges and universities, which I'm predominantly speaking to, where you can walk away with an undergraduate bachelor's degree after 4 years. So you have those different options, and there are different types of schools that you can choose from. So very important, as you're choosing schools, please know the distinction between a public and a private school. Let me know in the chat if you know the difference between a public college or university and a private one. You don't have to tell me what the difference is, but let me know. Just say yes if you do, no if you don't. All right, someone, okay, I'm seeing some yeses. I see a no, and I appreciate the no. Thank you for being honest about that. But the good news is you will in just a second. Now, I'll tell you, public colleges, there is a big distinction between a public college and a private one. Public colleges are usually funded by state and federal government entities. They're usually larger than private schools. And there's usually an in-state and an out-of-state tuition rate. If you live in that state, like if New Jersey, if you pick a public school in New Jersey, you're paying in-state rate. If I live in Virginia, and so if I went to school in New Jersey, then I would pay the out-of-state rate, and it's usually higher than the in-state tuition. Those are the key distinctions for a public school. Now, a private school operates a little bit different. They're usually nonprofit, or they usually get their funding from other sources other than governmental entities, and they usually have one tuition rate. They usually just have one rate, and whether you're in state or out of state, it really doesn't matter to them. They're going to give everybody the same flat rate. Private schools are generally smaller in size than public schools are, but they usually cost more. So the cost is a key factor in between public and private schools. So think about that as you're picking colleges. So as you're choosing a college, you have to be thinking about what's going to be a good fit for you. Not your mama, not your friends, not your cousin, but for you as an individual. What fits your personality and your interests, and what are your goals? I do highly encourage students to go to a college that's affordable. And when you're picking colleges, it's okay to pick more than one school. I recommend students at least have 5 to 10 schools by the summer of their junior year, and you start to narrow down that list over time if you'd like. But pick schools at different price points. Pick schools that are $20,000 a year, maybe $40,000 a year, etc., so that as you apply to those schools, you would have gotten accepted in the schools that you can afford, that may be a little bit more expensive or very expensive, and you have some really good choices to make. Rank what's important to you. If it's do they have my degree program? Are they close to home? I like to be closer to home, or some kids, I like to be further away from home. The campus size, I want to go to a large campus or a smaller campus, or I want a smaller teachers to student ratio, or vice versa. And you might want us to go to a school that has a traditional or blended learning style. And I think most schools now can say that they have a blended learning style between virtual schools and in-person classes. So there's a good question in the chat about what are the number of schools that you should apply to. Here's what I recommend. I recommend 5. But it's not to say that if you absolutely know where you want to go, you can apply to less schools. And if you say, I'm not too sure and I might get scholarships, so I'm going to apply to more than 5 schools. So do what you feel comfortable with. But a good safe number, and my recommendation would be to at least 5. And that way you can hit schools at different price points and schools that may be of different sizes, and make sure you have the programs that you're looking for. So excellent question. Here I listed a couple of online search tools that could help you to research those colleges. I'm really big about researching colleges and their requirements. You should not be applying to schools blindly, and it should not be a surprise to you your senior year. Wait a minute, they require 1,300 SAT score? Well, I didn't know that. Why don't you know that? So if you're a freshman, sophomore, or junior, it is not too early for you to start researching schools and making sure you understand what their requirements are to get accepted. And now I would also encourage you to visit campuses, either in person, outside of the pandemic, and also virtually. Go on virtual tours. Many schools are offering virtual tours because they understand and respect the climate we're in with the pandemic. Now, I do want to bring your attention to an upcoming college fair. This is for students who are interested in historically Black colleges and universities. This is not the only college fair that's out there, but let me tell you how this one particularly works. It's coming up on May 1st from 1 to 3 o'clock Eastern time. And here's the link to register, and I'll make sure I provide you with all these slides from tonight's event. And I will say that I want to make sure that you are actively go out and look for virtual college fairs, because it's an opportunity to hear from college officials on what differentiates and what makes their school unique. And I will tell you that I want to say the National College Resource Board, they just had one last Friday, so we just missed that window. but they actually were admitting students on the spot and giving away scholarships on the spot. It's called the Black Expo College Fairs, if you're interested. They have events coming up probably throughout this year, more events coming up. And I would encourage you to check out those and any other virtual career fairs, because there's great information being shared. There's opportunities to apply and maybe even get accepted into colleges in some of them. And some of them are also giving out scholarships on the spot. So my whole point with it is use these opportunities to your advantage. Someone asked a question if they are accepting juniors or seniors. It depends on the college fair. I have seen some who were accepting juniors and seniors, some who were just accepting seniors, and some who were giving out scholarships to individuals who were freshmen, sophomore, juniors, and seniors. So it just depends on the entity and what they're there to do. So I hope that helps, but there's a whole lot of different variety, which is even more the reason why if you're a freshman all the way up to a senior, well, you should really strongly consider those. Also, so now once you have picked that list of colleges, like someone asked how many, and you've researched those schools and you know the requirements, I would strongly encourage you to put together a simple spreadsheet that lists all the colleges and their requirements in one place. I did this with my son and it was outstanding since he had 13 schools. I needed a place to be able to quickly do a snapshot of, okay, so which ones cost this much and when are the deadlines? And this gives you that opportunity. You can get the college name, the location, whether there are college tours they're offering, how much the tuition is, room and board, when their deadlines are, how much the application fees are. It's great having all that information in one place. There's even a place for admissions information, like what's the minimum GPA they require, or SAT and SAT test scores. Do they require letters of recommendation and essays? So it gives you one snapshot to be able to share that, to document that, and you and your parents can sit down and look at that information in one place. So I hope that helps. Now, another question that came up was, how do we find fairs like those? Google college fairs, Black college fairs for STEM students, college fairs for pre-med students. Google is probably your best friend, and you're going to hear me say that throughout my talks because that's the way I hear about it. Also, if you're on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, those sort of things, join groups that specialize, or they do a lot of college planning, they push out a lot of college planning, college preparedness information. Look to join those groups. There's a lot of great ways that people are posting these very things to different groups on social media too. Hope that helps. All right, now I want to talk a little bit about the college application process itself. So when I talk to students, I really want to share that, the college application is really a packet of information that you're providing to a college. It's not just the application. The application is one aspect, but they generally want to see transcripts, essays. They may ask you for letters of recommendations and test scores. So if they're asking for these things, then you must provide them in your package, unless they say it's optional. Follow the directions of each college application. Don't take Miss Christie's word for what should be included just by looking at this slide. The colleges and universities themselves are the best source for what they're going to be looking for and what's going to be required. Generally, you would submit your package electronically, either by creating an online account through a web portal or that university's website, or by mail. And either one is acceptable if they give you those options. And again, be mindful of the college application fees, and they may vary from college to college. It could be anywhere from $35 to $100. Sometimes it's free. It really could be from $0 to $100, if I say it that way. My son, he had a few that didn't require any application fees, but for the most part, we paid roughly about $950. But please know what those different fees are as you're going into it. And if you are a student who is on reduced or free lunch or other, you get other benefits or assistance, you may be able to get your college application fees waived. I would encourage you to reach out to the colleges and universities and or your school counseling office to find out more about that. So I want to introduce you to a couple of 3 different web portals that you could easily apply to colleges, multiple colleges in one place. How many of you have heard of the Common App before? Let me know in the chat. Okay, good. Several of you have. One person said no, they haven't, but they will soon. Good. Okay, a lot of you have. So this is great. I applied for probably about 10 out of the 13 schools my high school senior applied to through this Common App. Over 900 colleges and universities are members of this portal, and which means that you can apply to any of those 900 colleges through this one portal. Once you create an account, you'll establish your profile. He put in all his information, and he was able to research colleges and apply to those colleges from one place. It was outstanding. I didn't have to go to 13 different websites, 13 different create 13 different accounts, and I found that to be very valuable. The Common App, and I listed the website here for you. It opens, their new application opens every August 1st. And the beauty is you can reuse the same information that you put in about yourself and your particular application one time, and you can apply to multiple colleges there. You can set up an account for free. However, I will say that the different colleges still have their application fees. Some of them may waive their fees, but some of them don't. So you'll see the application fees will vary depending on which school you're applying to. And then there are essay prompts that are included in the Common App that can be reused for multiple. Once you input the responses to the essay questions, every time you apply to a college that's accepting that same essay prompt, your same essay will go with that application. So you don't have to keep typing that same prompt in over and over again. Absolutely loved it, and it saved us quite a bit of time. Here's another one. It's called the Coalition App. The Coalition for Access, Affordability, and Success. Has anybody ever heard of this one? It's a newer one to me, but good. Jasmine has, okay. Ambi, I hope I'm pronouncing it right, has. Watts, no. Leslie hasn't. Vanessa has. But this is good. This is a new one. It works similar to the Common App in that you can create an account and apply to multiple schools through that one. There's roughly about 200 colleges that are members of this one. So as you can see, the Common App on the previous slide has more colleges and universities who are members. But here, one of the differentiators is in order to be able to be a college member here, they have to have some factors. They have to meet certain eligibility, like that college has to be affordable with their tuition. They have to offer needs-based financial aid and have a 6-year graduation rate of 70% or higher. So they put some criterion on those colleges and universities who may want to become members. And again, you can apply to multiple colleges through this portal. And they have essay prompts as well. So something else to consider, if you were to ask me which would I prefer, I would prefer the Common App because it gives you the larger pool, over 900 colleges and universities through that one app. So I would strongly encourage you to apply through that one. But again, check out the Coalition app if you feel that may work for you. Also, how many of you have heard of the Common Black College app? I always promote HBCU. Not everybody will go to an HBCU. Not everybody will go to a predominantly white institution, but I try to give equal due diligence to all colleges and universities. Well, the Common Black College app is, okay, many of you haven't heard of it. It works similar to the Common App. There's about 55 HBCUs who are members of this web portal, and it's really only for HBCUs. But you can sign up and create an account for about roughly $20, maybe a little bit higher now. And then you can apply, you can research and apply to HBCUs through this app too, if they're a member. You can upload test scores and do some research on colleges here too. The one thing that I will say is there's roughly about 102 HBCUs in the country, and about half of those are members of the Common Black College app. So please check that out. They're actually the ones who are doing the college fair that I mentioned on the previous slide. So that's another great source of information to you. And then we've talked about transcripts. Again, this is another part of the college application packet. And so I'm not going to re-stress everything on this slide, but I do want to emphasize that you should know the process to getting your transcripts. And if you have a need to request transcripts, like rising juniors, you'll be rising seniors in the fall, you're going to see this activity increase exponentially over the next year. Make sure that you know that process, and make sure you know if a college or university or a scholarship entity, if they want it mailed straight to them with the official transcripts, or if they want an electronic copy of the transcripts. Pay attention to the instructions and send the transcripts the way that they have asked. Don't do what you want to do. Do what the entity has asked you to do. Otherwise, you could disqualify yourself from the competition. And it is your responsibility to double check to make sure that your high school gets your transcripts out to everybody you need them out to on time. I can't stress that you should not just rely on, well, I requested them 3 weeks ago and my high school should have. Well, if you don't double check to make sure it happened, you may likely find that your documents may or may not have gotten sent out the way that you thought they would. So I would encourage you, I would emphasize, make sure that your high schools are doing what you need them to do, and make sure you know that they've gotten out. All right. All right. So next, I want to talk about types of essays and letters of recommendations. How many of you are fond of writing essays? Let me know in the chat if you love writing essays. Nah, somebody said no. Me, LOL. All right. I don't particularly care for them, but I tell you what, essays love you. And here's why. Right now, particularly during the COVID pandemic right now, because many colleges aren't necessarily requiring SAT and ACT test scores, guess what they're putting a lot of emphasis on? Essays and letters of recommendation. So those things will become weighted heavier, your academics will be weighted heavier, and your applications will, because they have to make their assessment based on the information that they can receive. Now, do know that as you're thinking about essays and LORs, or letters of recommendations, there are two types you need. Listen very carefully, juniors and sophomores, etc. You'll need essays and letters of recommendations to apply to colleges, and you'll need them both when you're applying for scholarships. They are not the exact same. When you're applying to colleges, you're writing essays and you're getting letters of recommendation that answer the question, what makes you a good candidate for admissions into our school? When you're using those documents for scholarships, they're not asking that. They're asking, why should we award you our scholarship money? So you have to tweak both to those angles. One of the things I recommend when you're getting letters of recommendation is ask your recommenders for two up front. Hey, Ms. Robinson, can I get a letter of recommendation for college admissions and for scholarships? And that way you can reuse those over and over again as you need to. And we'll talk about both here briefly. Matthew, you're a brave soul. You're the only one who mentioned that you actually like writing essays. So let me tell you how that's going to work to your benefit. Because essay writing is a great opportunity to differentiate yourself. When you're thinking about writing essays, think about it in the context of starting early. So if you're rising junior, don't wait till the last minute. Start writing essays over the summer or even this spring. Get someone you trust to proofread your essays. And if you're not familiar, find an online proofreading service or resource such as Grammarly and run your paper through it and get the feedback and make edits to your paper based on some of the recommendations. Follow directions and adhere to deadlines. If they say have it submitted by March 31st, don't submit it on April 1st, or it's going to be April Fool's for real for you, because they're not going to consider your application. If they say hand type it, if they say hand write it, write it. If they say type it, type it. Don't go over 500 words if they specify that's the cap. Don't give them 502. Follow directions to the T, because what happens is when you don't follow directions, it makes it easy for people to disqualify your entire packet. Don't make it easy for people, as I tell my sons. Make sure you speak to the exact essay topic. There is nothing worse, and I've reviewed plenty of essays in my day. There is nothing worse than you asking for somebody to talk about their leadership capabilities, and they're talking about every and anything except the key focus topic. Pay attention to that. You may often have writing prompts on different topics. So it's okay. I think it's great to have one on leadership or community service or whatever the topics are, and save them so you can reuse them for both colleges, applications, and scholarships. And here's another one key. Demonstrate what you know about the organization. It is not uncommon to write an essay and to talk about maybe leadership, and maybe you want to connect it back to a particular college's values around courage and commitment and etc. Then you want to speak to Hampton University. I acknowledge Hampton University, their core value is around integrity, and I exhibited this X, because you want to make a connection between who they are and who you are and why you are a good fit for that environment. And then talk about how you plan to make a difference. Very important. And then reuse your content over and over as much as you're able to. Another basic fact about essay writing, you should have an introduction, a middle, which has 2 to 3 key points you want to raise, and a conclusion. Organize your thoughts. If it's organized for you and organized for the person who critiques your essay, it'll likely be organized for those who are going to evaluate your essay. And then here are some of the common in this table here, some of the common essay topics that I generally see students having to write about. And these will be provided in the slides that you'll get sent, but I just wanted to introduce you to these different type of prompts. So there's no reason why you couldn't write an essay or start thinking about your thoughts around these different topics now. All right, so now that covers the essay. Now you have to talk about your letters of recommendation. Pick people who you value, who you think will write a positive letter about you. It could be teachers, counselors, coaches, employers, you name it. But start to make a list of who can write letters of recommendation for you. Make sure you give them instructions. So if your entity says, please mail them separately, or please include them with your package, or send them an email link, they'll send a link. Some people are sending links to the recommenders, and then the recommenders just have to upload it and it'll go straight back to that entity. But make sure you give them enough information to know how best to get your letter sent off in a timely manner. Give them enough time to write your letter. Don't wait until the deadline is approaching. Look, oh, I need 3 letters of recommendation. Hey, Miss Christie, can you write me a letter and it's due by tomorrow? I'm likely to say no. Did you just find out about this yesterday? Well, no. Well, then no, I can't. So you have to value that when you're thinking about putting together your plan. Add letters of recommendation to your plan and make sure you give time for that. There's a question, should juniors consider internships? Let's come back to that in the chat. What I will say about internships is absolutely, if you can find internships as a junior or senior, certainly as you are in college, I would encourage you to certainly apply for internships to get experience. It's really about gaining experience in your career field, but certainly apply for internships if that is something you're interested in doing. Also, make sure, and this is very important when we're talking about letters of recommendation, make sure that you follow up to make sure your recommender sent them off. And then, even before they send them off, offer to pre-draft a letter of recommendation. How many of you have heard of anybody tell you that before? Put in the chat if anybody has encouraged you to write your own letter of recommendation, because I am. Nope. Oh, okay. And see, that's one of those golden nuggets I want you to take away tonight. And this is how it'll go. I'm going to use Ms. Robinson, for example. I'm a student in her English class. Hi, Ms. Robinson, how are you? You remember me? You were my junior year English teacher. Well, I'm a senior now, and I'm applying for scholarships in the colleges, and I'd love it if you could write a letter of recommendation for me. Here's my scholar profile, and for those who are looking, this is actually my son's scholar profile I'm showing you. Here's my scholar profile. And here is a sample letter of recommendation that I pre-drafted, and you give them that too, and say, I'm happy to send this to you electronically for you to tailor and customize based on what you know about me and what you found on my scholar profile. Now, Ms. Robinson, if you can put in the public chat to everyone, how likely would you be to write a letter of recommendation if your students came to you with their scholar profile and a pre-drafted letter that all you had to do was customize and tweak and it was already formatted? Let us know, Ms. Robinson, because I personally would be happy. So she said it would be very likely. And so what you want to do with that, and it may be a little bit more work on your part, and you're probably grunting and saying, here we go, more work. But more work for you means less work for the people who have to get you what you need. And so once you create one letter, you can provide that to multiple recommenders and they can tweak it how they need to. But you're likely to get yours back faster than anybody else you know. I guarantee you. So please consider that when you're thinking about getting letters of recommendation. Also, have your recommenders generalize how they do their salutation or their greeting. Dear, instead of saying Dear Hampton University, have them say Dear College Admissions Official and give you a copy of that signed letter of recommendation. Why? Because you can use it over and over again with other applications. Same with scholarships. Dear Scholarship Entity instead of Dear Bank of America. Please, I recommend Christie for your scholarship. If you take out their specific name and generalize it to a scholarship entity, you can reuse that content. I'm all about doing things smarter and faster. How does the personalization work with the Common App? That's a good question. And what I will tell you is the Common App will do one or two things from what I've seen. They will ask the recommender to automatically, you may have to put the recommender's email address in, and they will send them a link to provide your recommendation. And they may have a generalized letter that they're just going to send on your behalf, or they'll let you upload. Some organizations will let you upload a letter of recommendation electronically, and then you would simply upload it from your computer if you have it. Here is a sample. Before someone asks, is there a sample letter of recommendation? Absolutely. There's one in the student workbook that you'll get, but it's also one on my website. I mean, electronic version of it. But this is what you would use to make sure that you tailor it to your individual preferences. And you can give them and they can take it from there. So that's the letter of recommendation. Is a school profile the same as a scholar profile? I wish I could help you. I'm not familiar with the school profile, so I'm gonna have to say I'm not sure. My scholar profile, that's kind of what I named it years ago, but it's really like a one-page resume. But if my son's high school, they called it a self-assessment. So, excuse me, your high school may call it something different, but if you have something different, feel free to use what you have if you think it'll meet the same intent. Good question. All right, so I've already talked about applying for the SAT, and I'm not going to reiterate a lot here other than to say many colleges are making it test optional. So your essays, your letters of recommendation, and your academics will be weighted heavier. But if you still are interested in getting merit scholarships through the college or university, I would still encourage you to apply for the SAT and ACT tests. They are socially distancing and putting COVID protocols in place for students to still be able to safely take the test should they desire to. So if you're thinking about, hey, I need money and I really need to try to get good scores and a merit scholarship, then I would encourage you to still apply. And I'm listing here the registration sites for both the SAT and ACT tests. And please keep in mind that you will need to provide your colleges that you narrow down your college list and from your top 5 or top however many schools, you'll need to provide that when you register for the SAT so they can send your scores to those colleges and universities. So there's connections between picking a major, picking a school, and these things. Now, what I mentioned earlier is take the test, do some prep work, and retake the test immediately after you've prepped. I did this with my niece back in 2014-ish, and she did phenomenal and ended up with a merit scholarship. Here, I've listed some resources for your consideration. Some of them are SAT and ACT related. Some are one or the other. Some are more costly than others. Some are free. Some are more engaging. My mother and I paid for my niece to take I think it was a Khan Academy, or no, it was a Kaplan prep course. We spent about $500. How many of you in the chat think $500 is a lot of money? Let me know. We spent about $500, and okay, I'm seeing some yeses. All right, well, let me tell you this. What if you spent $500 and you retook the test immediately after? She finished the course on like a Thursday, and she went to take the test on a Saturday. Her SAT scores were so good that she ended up with a merit scholarship, and it covered $30,000 a year worth of tuition times 4 years. That's $120,000 worth of tuition her parents didn't have to pay. Yeah, that is nice. Now, how many of you still think $500 is still a lot of money? Now, Wyatt says, should I wait to receive my scores before I apply to colleges? It depends. So if you are a junior, I would encourage you should be taking the SAT between now and August, so that you have your scores back when you apply in September and October. Because what if you don't have your scores back and the schools you want to go to say you have to have a minimum 1,000 SAT score and you got a 980? You may decide, oh, I still want to apply, or I want to boost my scores again. So the earlier you take it, the better off you are. I would encourage you to prep over the summer. Take it now, see how you do. Prep over the summer and take it again in August, ideally. But certainly talk to your parents about what makes sense for your plan. I don't encourage, you can wait until you can apply to schools, but here's a problem, Wyatt, or Watts, I'm sorry, I'm saying your name wrong. If you wait until you've already applied to colleges, the college is not going to do anything with your application until all those things are received. So if you send in your college application and they require an SAT test, your package is going to be considered incomplete until they receive your test scores. So please think about that as you're considering your next steps. So here's what should be in your application package. And I do this with my son. Let me show you. He has a whole folder here on my desk. He has a whole folder for college stuff. And he's been applying for scholarships and college applications. And each one, we have a checklist. You may see this posted. It has a little checklist of everything that they say is included in that package. Here's the same thing here. I would invite you and encourage you to have a checklist to make sure whatever they required, you have completed effectively and efficiently in your package. That's really the intent of that slide. And then once you get admitted, this is a new slide I'm adding, but make sure that you have completed the FAFSA, which we've talked about. If their school, they may give you instructions to activate your student account at that new college, do so. You might have to submit an enrollment deposit, a new student orientation fee, complete your campus housing application and deposit, complete health forms. You will have to submit health forms to almost every college or university, and send your final transcripts after your senior year. So please be thinking about those things as you are getting your acceptances in and selecting a college. Now, I'm only going to touch on a couple of slides, but I do want to talk about the funding process. How many of you already have college already paid for? Let me know in the chat. If you don't have to worry about paying for college, give me a yes. Okay, I'm getting some no's. I didn't have it paid for. I didn't have it covered. My kids didn't have it covered. They had some scholarships and some help in different ways. Okay, I'm seeing a lot of no's. The key thing I want you to think about in tonight's discussion is to go where you can afford. I'm not going to get into too much details for college funding because I want you to join us on April 22nd for the college funding webinar, but I do want to touch on a few things, particularly for the seniors. When you're thinking about college, there's typical costs such as tuition, room and board, if you're going to stay on campus and you have to eat, there's books and fees, and then there's personal expenses. And as you can see from this little chart on the right, a public in-state school is about $10K a year. And if you see all the way to the right, the private school is about $30K. So as you can see, it's more costly to go to a private school than a public school. And then since most of you said no in the chat, you have to think about, how am I going to pay for it? Are your parents going to pay out of pocket with their own cash and their, out of their wallets, their savings plans, retirement plans, which I do not recommend paying for college out of your retirement plan, unless that's the last resort, parents. But also you have to think about financial aid and if there are any gift aid or scholarships or grants you're eligible for. Now, when we talk about financial aid, we just simply mean money to pay for college. Who's going to give you money to pay for college? Financial aid could either mean student loans, and this is money you or your parents can borrow, but you have to pay it back. Work study, which is money that you can earn and make while you're in college, and it'll offset some of your expenses. Scholarships and grants, which is free money that you do not have to pay back. So those are the types of financial aid that are commonly referred to. We talked about the FAFSA already. If you're a senior, you should be applying for the free application for federal student aid. Here's the website link. Every year you're in college, you should fill this out. Don't skip a year if you want financial aid. It is not a one-time thing. Don't assume that, hey, I'm in college now, I never have to do a FAFSA again. Wrong answer. You won't get any financial aid the next year. So make sure, even though it's free to apply, make sure you apply every year while you are in school. And if you're a senior and you haven't, you should. So once you go through and fill out the FAFSA, I'm going to highlight and just go to the end of this. Once you fill it out, they're going to send you how much they think you can pay out of pocket, and also send your scores, not your scores, but your expected family contribution in pink here to your colleges and universities. And then the colleges are going to calculate how much financial aid they're going to offer you. And then you're going to get an award letter in purple here. You're going to get an award letter that says, here's how much X university is going to offer you. It could be student loans, it could be grants, it could be scholarships, it could be work study. And then you have to determine in this orange box, do I have enough money? If a school costs $30,000 and you only get $10,000 on your award letter covered, you still have a $20,000 difference that you got to figure out how to pay for. And then if the answer to no, you don't have enough money, then you need to start looking for scholarships and grants. There are different types of scholarships. There's need-based, merit-based, interest-based, military, and athletic scholarships. I want to touch on the interest-based. So if you're not looking for need-based scholarships where it's based on your family's income, if you have low income situation, many entities are certainly interested in giving students who need the financial aid scholarships. But also, people are giving them out for various interests. Whether you play a musical instrument, or you're left-handed or right-handed, or you have a disability, or you are interested in majoring in a particular career field, there's money for almost everything you can think of. And so I would encourage and challenge each of you to look for scholarships and search and look for them in ways that think differently about how you can go to find scholarships, basically. And once you do, when you get into the part where you're applying for those scholarships, just know that scholarship applications really don't look much different from a college application, with the exception that they may require some additional documents, whether it's financial documents to prove you have a financial need. Maybe they want to see your college acceptance, verify that you've been accepted into a college before we give you our money. And they may ask you to talk about some of those interests and activities that make you eligible for their particular type of scholarship. But as you can see, some of those same pieces that we talked about before with the test scores and transcripts are also the case here. So here's what I recommend. One of the things I'm really passionate about is talking about scholarships, and we'll talk more about that on April 22nd when we do the second college funding workshop. But what I want to do is tell you to have a plan. Don't just go into looking for scholarships blindly. Don't wait for somebody else to knock on your door and hand you scholarship applications. You and your parents should do an exhaustive search looking for scholarships. Look for large dollar amount and small dollar amount scholarships. Don't just look for national scholarships. National scholarships are great. Just know that a lot more people are going to be applying for those all over the country. I encourage you to look for local scholarships. The pool of candidates are usually smaller, and that'll help increase your odds of getting the scholarship. There are organizations, nonprofits, Greek organizations, fraternities and sororities, religious groups, even employers have scholarships. So please make sure that you do an exhaustive search. And then find a scholarship mentor. This is new. I ran into a young lady who had received over $1 million in scholarship awards. And I asked her what was her secret. And she said she had a scholarship mentor. She actually reached out to individuals on like Bill and Melinda Gates on their website who were previous recipients, reached out to a couple of those students and said, hey, are you willing to mentor me so that I can maximize my chances? A couple of them told her yes. And so they helped her to put together creative things in her essay, et cetera, in her package. And she also ended up with many different scholarships. So I would encourage you to do the same and make sure that you don't run from essays, because right now scholarship entities are requiring essays because it's one of the key ways that they can determine who to give their money to. So don't run from them. The students who are running from essays aren't the ones getting the money. It's the ones who are willing to write the essays. So you keep hearing me emphasize that. And track your scholarship progress just as you would your college application. Make a list, and here's the template. Obviously, I have a template for that too. Track your progress with those. Make sure you list out. My son has this exact spreadsheet, I promise you. We have all the scholarships he's applied for. We know when they're due. We know how much money they're awarding, whether they require essays or not, when we submitted them, when we got decisions back. Create a simple system for yourself so that you can stay organized. There's a question: when should the FAFSA be submitted? As soon as possible. So your senior year, if you are a senior, as after October 1st of every year, the FAFSA opens up for that year. In October of every senior year, or every year you're in college, you should be submitting the FAFSA. Don't wait for the tax information for the next year. You can complete your FAFSA with the tax information from the previous year. So if you don't have the necessary information, how do you know you don't? Make sure you go in, start your application. You'd be surprised. You may have all the information you need. You can save your application and come back and complete it, but do not delay, because colleges are going to give their money out on a first come, first served basis. So if you wait until the spring to apply, you're going to be left with whatever, if ever, or if there is any money left. So certainly don't take that advice. Take that advice to heart and don't wait too late. Also, where can you find scholarships? Everywhere, anywhere. Google is your best friend. When I work with families, they want me to do all the legwork and find them scholarships, and I refuse, because there are so many scholarships out there, and I don't know your child. I don't know you as a student. I don't know what you're best interested in, but you do, and you probably have more time to look for your scholarships than I do. What I encourage my son to do is look for about 3 scholarships a week, 3 to 5 scholarships a week, and apply for them. I would encourage the same. Your high school counseling offices are a great source of scholarships. My sons put out scholarships at least 2 to 3 times a week, and they're really good scholarships, and we've been applying for some of them. Also, I have listed here some great online websites that offer scholarship searches where you can filter, you can create a profile and filter to find scholarships that are relevant mostly to you. And you can apply for those through those different systems. And also on my website, investinothers.com, in green at the bottom, I have a list of scholarships there too. But generally speaking, put together a plan. Look for scholarships that are available and that meet your eligibility. And don't stop looking until you have more than enough money that you need. Someone asked, if you get awarded a scholarship, do you have to use it that year or do they accumulate? It depends on the entity. Most scholarships are for the upcoming academic school year, unless the entity tells you otherwise. If you do apply for a scholarship and it gets awarded, they may have stipulations that you have to go to a certain school or be enrolled in certain programs, but make sure you understand their eligibility requirements on that particular scholarship award, because they're not all the same eligibility requirements. Good question. And they can accumulate, and I will tell you that you can get a scholarship, you can get a one-time scholarship, and it'll say you get a one-time award of $10,000, for example, or like my son applied to some, it's a recurring. You can get $10,000 every year you're in school just from applying that one time. So that is another differentiator to be looking at when you're looking for scholarships. So I'm wrapping up, and I am at the end of my talk. And I just want to generally say to you all that this is a very important time in your lives. It's your process, not your parents. They're certainly there to help you, but take responsibility. It's your future. And it's exciting to be in this place. You have access to information that I didn't have when I was your age because I didn't even have Google. And so use those things to your advantage. Use your time wisely. Rising juniors, rising sophomores. Don't waste your summers. Use them to get ahead. So when your senior year hits, you're not struggling trying to juggle so many things at one time. Start having conversations with your parents and guardians about how you're going to pay for college. There are a lot of no's earlier when I talked about who has the funding to pay for it. Importantly, get organized, parents and students. As I talked about earlier, I have a folder both on my computer and a hard copy folder for my son. And I keep it on my desk here. And anytime I say, go get your blue folder, he knows to go and get this folder. And it has everything he needs, including his acceptance letters in it, every application, you name it, so that you don't have to go hunting around for things when you need them the most. Also, save your account and login information in one place so that you don't try to remember 30 different websites you've been to and what's the different passwords, because they're not all going to be the same. So create a list. I have a list on my phone and my notes section with all of my username and passwords for my son's accounts. Also, I created a separate email address. So consider that with your parents. And has his name and it has college@gmail.com. All of his college items go to that same email address. Why? Because I found that y'all generation, y'all Gen Zers, don't check email every day. Let me know in the chat if you're checking email daily, students. I doubt if many of you are. So what I found is organizations, okay, maybe I'm wrong. I see a lot of I do's. I stand corrected, Vanessa and Ambi and Benjalee. Okay, Matthew says yes. But my son wasn't. And what happened is he was missing out. One of the colleges needed an extra form filled out. Well, I'm checking and he's not. And I'm like, hey, have you checked your email? No. So you don't want to miss out on opportunities because you're not checking daily. Check your emails at least once a day until you get accepted into all the schools you want and you get all the funding you need. And then even still continue to check your emails. All right. Some people said every other day. What's the name of the separate email? You can create whatever you want. I just use my son's name and then I put college at the end so that he and I would know that it was his college email at Gmail. And I put that on all his forms. So I use that same college email address to apply. It was a Gmail account, basically. And so you name it whatever you want. Don't make it anything provocative because you might want to use it for your applications, but make it something that will work for you and your parents. And you do all of your college business through that account and give your parents access to that account too. And then lastly, take advantage of your school. I think West Caldwell Tech is doing a phenomenal job hosting this event for you. And I hope that you're getting some things here that certainly complements what your school counselors are offering you. Make sure you create a budget. And lastly, let me just say, don't waste people's time. If you have people that's willing to help you, your school officials, your parents, people are going to write letters for you, review things for you. If they ask you for something so that they can help you, please be responsive and don't waste their time in the process. I had students who wanted me to write a letter of recommendation. And I said, well, send me your scholar profile on Wednesday. You know when I got it? The Tuesday of the following week. And when they circle back around to say, I need my letter, I said, well, find someone else to write it because you can't follow directions and you didn't respect my time. I needed it a week ago and you waited and delayed. So help save yourself and help yourself by helping people to be able to help you and be effective. And lastly, but just as important, please say thank you to your parents and the many, many people who are absolutely willing to help you throughout this process. So with that being said, join us for the next workshop coming up on, or seminar coming up on April 22nd, same time at 6:30. And we're going to go into more details on the college funding strategies. So don't y'all run for that. Sign up tonight if you have not signed up, because many of you need money, and I certainly want to help you to find money. One of the things I try to do is help students to be able to graduate debt-free. Student loan rates are high, and we want to minimize the number of students who have to take out loans. So the registration is at the bottom. Let's see. The link is at the bottom of the screen. You may have to take a screenshot or a picture with your phone, but I'll also provide the link when I send out the slides later tonight. You'll find it there. And if you want to,
we'll send it out again too, Dr. Murray.
okay, excellent. So you will have access to the link. And if you have friends who aren't getting a set of the books from your high school, here's my website. They can grab a copy too. If they also want to get informed and get some of the same resources you have access to, please follow me on Twitter. Invest in Others on Facebook. Invest in Others 1 on Instagram. And I'm on TikTok officially now too, as of about 3 weeks ago. So I'm pushing out videos and sharing useful information there too. All right. And then if you want, there are a lot of different YouTube videos. The one that I highly recommend that you all watch is the Writing Essays and Getting Letters of Recommendation. I've talked a lot about essays and the importance and the value of them. And I would strongly encourage you, once you have the slide deck, to go back and watch that video. And as you're thinking about writing essays, it'll give you some very, very useful tools. And also, we would love for you to share with us your feedback on tonight's session. So I am going to put in the chat the link to the survey. We want your feedback because we really want to make sure that we bring back other topics. We want to hear about topics that might be of interest to you. And so please give us some feedback and take the survey. Okay, I think I just put it in the chat for you. So click that link I just added, the SurveyMonkey link, and tell us what you thought about this webinar so that we can make improvements and bring other things to you that you might desire. And with that being said, I am going to open it up for questions. And I tried to catch questions during the session, but I do recognize that I might have missed some as I was talking fast. Someone mentioned how to receive the books. I'm going to allow Ms. Robinson as I will send the books to Ms. Robinson, and she will disseminate them to the students. Ms. Robinson, do you have any additional?
Yes. So once I get the books, I'm going to send them to the principals that attended, and for my students, we'll work out something for you to get them. But if you're not a West Caldwell Tech student, I'll make sure that I send them to your principals.
Okay, and I am going to provide Ms. Robinson with a list of all those who registered the event so she can reconcile it with those who actually attended, and that will help her to be able to get those to the students. All right.
I just want to say thank you, Dr. Murray, for just giving us all of this information. I had a couple private conversations where, the parents are totally grateful that, a lot of this information is being conveyed to them. Some of them requested it to be earlier in the year. So you and I discussed that already in terms of trying to get this kind of information out to the parents a little earlier.
Absolutely. I'd love to do both webinars for your seniors, for your students, but predominantly to help your students, your seniors, around August, September timeframe of each year. I think that would be very valuable, or even over the summer. So we can talk about what makes sense for your students. Emily, I see you have any feedback. I don't want to put you on the spot, but any questions or any thoughts?
I thought it was absolutely amazing. Thank you so much for sharing those incredible spreadsheets and your stories as well. It was incredible. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I appreciate you attending. I'm glad you found it useful. Any other last minute questions? I know I'm slightly over my time, but if you have a burning question, I don't want to leave without answering everyone's questions.
Oh, want to thank you for your excellent presentation.
Well, thank you. That sounds like a parent.
Well, I am a site facilitator with Gear Up.
Oh, fantastic.
And you were excellent.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Hi, my name is Amber, and I wanted to know when is the best time to start my college applications?
Are you a rising, will you be a rising senior in the fall, Amber?
Yes, ma'am.
I would say the Common App opens on August 1st. So anytime after August 1st, I would start, see, over the summer, I would go in and create my, between now and the summer, go ahead and create your Common App profile and start to populate some of your personal information that you'll need for your application. You can do that early. And then on August 1st, the Common App will push out their new application. And anytime after that, so once you've taken the SAT or ACT, if you choose to take it, and you have your letters of recommendation and your essays written, I would say as soon as you are ready, starting in early fall, between August and November, I would encourage most students to have their applications out. Also, please pay attention to early decisions and early admissions from each college or university, because they do have their own individual deadlines for those. And let that be a guiding tool for you to use.
Okay, I have another question. So, what do you suggest about balancing like applying to multiple colleges and the applications they may have?
So, you know what I did for my son, since he had 13 schools? I looked at the deadlines, and I started with the deadlines that were coming up. Number one, I applied for the school he wanted to go to the most first. So I said, what's your top school? I applied for that first. And then all the other ones, I did it in the order in which their deadlines were coming up. So if there was one that I knew I could wait till November, I did that later. But there were other ones who had early decisions or early admissions in like September or October. So I just went down a list and did them in the order in which their deadlines were approaching. I hope that helps.
Yeah, it does. And your son, off the record, he is so blessed to have you because my mom would never do that for me. So,
Oh, I appreciate that. And you know what? I'm going to have to let him know that. It's always interesting because most kids don't feel that way about their parents, but they can identify with others, and whether it's family or friends. So they're in that same boat. I don't think they appreciate me nearly as much, but they hear me talk about this stuff all the time, so they're probably tone deaf. Any other questions? You can put it in the chat, or you can ask it out loud. All right. So without hearing any
I
further
have a
questions,
question.
okay, absolutely.
Hi, my name is Vanessa. I'm a junior from North Tech. So I would like to ask, what would you say for people who want to be a bit more ambitious with the colleges they apply to, but making sure that they're not making those colleges the only thing that they apply to?
So good question. One follow-up question. What do you mean by ambitious?
So like trying to get into the more selective colleges.
More selective in terms of like Ivy League, or what type of
Yeah,
college?
Ivy League, those sorts.
So here's what I'll tell you: apply anyway. Most people think that Ivy League schools only admit students with like a 4.4 GPA. And what I'm finding is they have students in each tier academic area that they're willing to accept, and that they are actually accepting. They're looking for well-rounded students. They're certainly looking for students who are taking on academically rigorous courses, but it's not just GPA based. So if you're interested in an Ivy League school, I would encourage you to apply. Whatever your grade point averaging is, and I don't need to know what it is, but apply, because they have different categories that they're looking for students in. And you won't know until you apply. And Ivy League schools sometimes have really good financial aid because they recognize the cost to attending those schools are so high. And so they have alumni and other funding. And you'd be surprised, you can also get really good financial aid packages by applying to those Ivy League schools. So my overall guidance would be pick the school that you're interested in, pay attention to their deadlines, and if Ivy League schools are certainly schools that you want to apply to, the students I work with, I'm encouraging you to believe in yourself enough to apply, because one or two things are going to happen. Either they're going to say yes or they're going to say no. But just don't make one school the only school you apply to. Give yourself some options with different type of schools.
Yeah, for sure. And I have another question. So I find myself when I go to the college info sessions, every college seems like a good college. And then it's just like, I don't even know where to start when making a list.
When you get my workbook, the green one, well, I thought I had the green one out, but in the green one, there's actually a document in it called level of different factors. Oh, here it is. College selection factors, level of importance. You have to really think about what's important to you. And it has a bunch of things listed, such as the location of the school, distance from home, class size, program, housing, cost to attend. So you have to narrow it down and start thinking about what is important to you. Is it the environment, going to visit school? So if you have a chance to go visit colleges and actually check out the physical campus, even if you don't get out of the car, but if you just want to drive through and look at the campus and check out to see if it's going to be a fit, what's it nearby? Is it in the city? Is it more, suburban area? I would encourage you. My sons, this is a small story, when they were little, I mean, from like 5 years old and up, every time we would travel for vacation to see family, I would take them to visit different colleges. Now, they didn't want to go to every school I took them to, but I wanted to expose them to so many different type of colleges that they could have a better sense of where they think they might be a good fit. Also, take advantage of virtual tours. Some of them will actually allow you, like, do a 3D cam view of the college or university to see more about the campus layout and to get a feel for that campus from your computer. And then talk to other students. If you're on social media, you may be able to find some groups where there's current, either college alumni or current college students, and ask them some questions. You'd be surprised how willing they would be to answer questions you have. And just explain. I wouldn't just blindly do it, but I would explain, hey, I'm a high school junior, senior, and I'm thinking about going to LSU or whatever that school is. And I was wondering if I could ask you some questions about it and hear more about your experiences. And I guarantee you they wouldn't mind sharing those with you.
All right. And lastly, I would like to ask, when it comes to like the more selective colleges, I heard that you really need to, stand out in leadership and volunteer community service. So what looks good for community service?
I think with community service, anything you've done to be able to help someone other than yourself. And whether it is volunteering in many different capacities, right now it may be a little bit more difficult, but even still, there may be ways for you to volunteer with organizations right now from home that you're not thinking about. So you have to think a little bit more creatively about what volunteering looks like during the pandemic. But if you have an opportunity, like if I've had a student to say, hey, Miss Christie, can I volunteer and get community service hours to help you post things on social media? Absolutely. And I'd write a letter for you and give you community service hours for that. So look for creative ways to volunteer in a safe manner right now. But I would just say there's a lot of things. Adopt the Highway Project. There's volunteer things at your school. Many of you are doing it and not really taking credit for it. If you are doing things at your churches and other local organizations where you're not getting paid to do it, those are all considered community service. And then as you're doing community service, go ahead and tee it up and say, hey, Mr. So-and-so, are you willing to write a letter recommendation or submit my community service hours when I need them? Go ahead and build those relationships and bridges for when you need them. But there's a lot of different opportunities to help somebody other than yourself. My nieces and nephews, because I own my own small business as well, they'll come to me and they'll volunteer to help with these kind of workshops, and I'll give them community service hours for that. People in your family who have business, or people locally, who would be more than happy to help you gain some more community service experience.
Thank you. That was all really helpful. I really appreciate this webinar.
More than welcome.
So I don't think there's any other questions. Dr.
Okay.
Murray, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I can't thank you enough. I'm looking forward to the April session. And it looks like Miss Angelo is too. But we really appreciate it, and there's so much information, and I know, for the people who didn't ask questions and still have questions, I'll make sure you can email me, and I'll make sure I'll contact Dr. Murray. And have a great night, and I appreciate everyone that chimed in that came and attended. I appreciate that.
Thank you. Everyone have a good night.
Good night.
See you in April.